Okay, let's see if this works any better. If it does, we're good to go. If it doesn't, well, it seems to be working better. Cool. Okay, for those of you who watched the first round of this stream, I apologize. I'm going to have to do it again because it just simply wasn't working. My internet was being fussy. I seem to have sacrificed the right goat and the right chicken to the right food Laveau, and things may be working now. Yeah, awesome, sweet. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am, as always, your host, Kevin Mears, demonologist, paranormal investigator, and the Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am going to be doing the live stream that I tried to do half an hour ago that didn't work so well. So I said last week I was going to do an episode on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and the origin. But instead, I have been inspired by YouTuber, Moorish American, and general crazy person Devon Bey to do a video about voodoo. For those of you, again, who were part of the first attempt at live stream, I'm starting from the scratch because I kind of need to do that given the circumstances. But I think I can keep you guys. I don't think I got enough of it out really for that to be a huge issue for anybody. And we'll see how it goes. But end of the day, we're here to talk about voodoo, what voodoo actually is versus what people think voodoo is. Because a lot of people really have no idea, and they do a serious disservice to it by the way that they misunderstand it. Because when I say voodoo, most of you probably think of voodoo dolls and zombies, black magic and curses and evil things and hurting people. And it isn't those things. And this is the first big mistake that Devon makes, is Devon has been threatening. The reason I'm doing this in particular is that Devon is threatening to do voodoo on people if they don't stop calling him out for the fact that he's saying things that are utter nonsense. And that's not how this works. And I felt a responsibility as at least honorary member of the watchdog community. Although, frankly, I wonder why I'm an honorary member, given I don't really do very many videos about it. I've only ever had Virgo on my show a few times. But all of that said, for good or ill, if it just paused, that's my fault. I hit the pause on the wrong thing. But he's trying to do voodoo on people. That isn't how voodoo works. It is a disrespect to what voodoo actually is, in my opinion. I find it offensive. I think people who practice voodoo will probably find it offensive. So I wanted to do a video about what voodoo is, what curses are, how they actually work, and why this is utter nonsense. So the first thing to understand about the nature of voodoo is not cursing people. It's not voodoo dolls. It's not magic. It's a religion. To say, I'm going to put voodoo on you, or I'm going to voodoo you, for God's sake, voodoo is a proper noun, not a verb, is like saying, I'm going to Catholicism you. I'm going to Judaism you. I'm going to Islam you. It's a silly idea. And we're going to be getting into Barons tonight, too, in fact, Teresa. None of these things work. Voodoo is a religion that is a creation of the African slave trade. And to understand what voodoo is and what voodoo dolls are, I think it's necessary for me to start by explaining where voodoo comes from. Voodoo started very much as voodoo as it's practiced in New Orleans and in Haiti and parts of South America and parts of the rest of the United States, really. It's actually pretty widespread. There's a voodoo church, recognized voodoo church in Philadelphia. There's been some prominent practice in Florida, even there's some very prominent practice and has been for a very long time in Cuba, despite it being at least technically a communist country, which is supposed to be strictly atheist. But it really properly starts as part of the African slave trade. Europeans capture slaves in Africa and bring them to the New World. They bring them to the Caribbean to work on plantations, to help prepare them, to train them for how they want them to work on plantations in the United States and South America. This is why you find it so prominently in Haiti and the Dominican Republic and throughout the Caribbean. And it's also particularly the form we find is most prominent in the South. Particularly, you find a lot of it in places like New Orleans, which were first inhabited by the French. Because here's what happens. You have all these different tribes in Africa, each of which has its own religious practices, its own gods. Now, throughout the history, long before the Europeans get involved, when two tribes went to war, what would often happen is there's this idea that our gods protect our people. The gods of other tribes protect their people. I don't worship the gods of that other tribe, not because they aren't gods, not because they aren't real, but because they don't protect my people. I worship the gods. I honor the gods that protect my people. Particularly in voodoo, it's a very prominent thing is that it is a reciprocal relationship. It's not like Christianity where you just praise and adore God and he will give blessings he decides. There can be almost an element of a business transaction. You give the lowest specific favors, particularly if you want something particular to happen. You have the Laveau visit you, and they will ask for specific things and things of that nature. It's a very personal interaction with your deity type of situation, sort of. But we'll get to. I'm getting ahead of myself. So what happens? What next happens is once it's brought to the New World, the French have a problem. They find the religion more than a little disturbing. It's very different. It's not Roman Catholicism. It's sort of animistic, sort of polytheistic, and eventually actually sort of deistic. But it doesn't sit comfortably with the Roman Catholicism, which is the official religion of France. So in 1685, the Black Law, or Negro, Code Negro, and Negro in the sense is black, the color in French, not the term for people from Africa. So I'm not being racist here. I'm reporting factually accurate information, and it actually has a different meaning here. But it sets a whole bunch of laws relating to the ownership of slaves, what slaves are allowed to do, even what Jews are allowed to do. For example, Judaism becomes banned in all French colonies and in France itself. The official religion of France is the Roman Catholic Church, and you have to be Roman Catholic. It also explicitly bans the religious practices of slaves. All slaves are expected to convert to Roman Catholicism. Like I said, historically, when one tribe defeated another, they often adopted the gods of the tribe that defeated them. They applied this to the 1685 law, and voodoo starts to incorporate the God and the saints of Roman Catholicism, so that now very much voodoo and Catholicism are intertwined. You can certainly be a Catholic without practicing voodoo, but it's very difficult to practice, particularly New Orleans voodoo, and not be a Catholic. Marie Laveau, the famous voodoo queen of New Orleans, considered herself a practicing Catholic. To have a voodoo funeral, you have to have a normal Catholic mass. You can also go to many cities in the American South. If you go to the churches, the cathedrals, and you go to where they have the statues of the saints, you find little bags of offerings left, which are by practicing voodoo in honor of the Loa that they believe that saint represents. Now, the practices of magic and voodoo, or the practices of magic that we associate with voodoo, are more properly called hoodoo. The way I always suggest people remember the difference is the old David Bowie song from the movie Labyrinth. Remind me of the babe with the power. What power? The power of voodoo. Hoodoo? You do. Voodoo is the religion. Hoodoo is the magic, the power. And very much like voodoo is a combination of Christianity and African tribal religion, hoodoo is a combination of the naturalistic magic of the tribes with various religious practices from Europe or magical practice, I should say, from Europe, particularly European witchcraft. The voodoo doll is a perfect example of this. And this also gets into the other big mistake Devon's making about cursing somebody in particular, not just voodoo. Because obviously you can't voodoo somebody. You can't just curse somebody. You need certain things. And to do a voodoo doll, traditionally, you make a doll in the shape of the person you're trying to curse. Then you include part of that person. Hair, fingernail clippings, a piece of their clothing, a personal item you stole from them that has a great deal of importance. Now, there are other types of curses in voodoo, other than voodoo dolls, that work in other ways. Another common thing to do would be that you have to bury a collection of objects on the person's property, sometimes under their front porch, sometimes on their property line in specific places. So here's the big mistake, and why none of the YouTubers who have been going, Generation Nation, Vilified Freedom, Road Pirate Films, Virgo, and all the other people that Devon is threatening to do voodoo on don't need to worry, because he has no idea who any of you are. And in voodoo, you have to have what they call a sympathetic link. You have to have hair, fingernail clippings. You have to have something of the person you're trying to curse to cast a curse. Or you need to be able to go to their property and leave something. You can't just go, there's this person whose name I don't know, whose face I don't know, out there somewhere in the world, maybe in this country, I want to curse them. You have to be specific. There are probably magicians that have other ways of doing things, but he's not saying he can use high ceremonial magic or omnimancy or something like that, or goetic magic. He is claiming he's going to use voodoo, and voodoo relies on that symbolic link between the curse you're making and the person you're trying to curse. Without it, you can't do anything. And even most other forms of magic, you need something about the person you're trying to curse. You need a picture of them is very helpful. Their actual name is there's a huge tradition going back thousands of years in both religion and magic about the importance and power of knowing someone's name gives you over them. If you watch the movie The Exorcist, if you read about exorcisms, a huge part of an exorcism is learning the name of the demon you're trying to cast out. And Rebecca said, Dirty South Cats, you're absolutely right. Devon Bey doesn't know anything about voodoo. He doesn't know anything about anything. The man is completely clueless, which is a big part of why I'm doing this video. Is you don't need, for the most part, you don't need to worry about somebody cursing at you because you said did something unusual they didn't like. They need more information than they have for you. There are ways that someone who actually knows what they're doing with magic could get around that potentially, but those don't exist in voodoo for the most part, and Devon doesn't have access to them. And in the incredibly unlikely, and I'll say this as well, I want to make this offer to anyone watching this now or in the future. If any of you do seriously feel like you come under a curse, reach out to me. I will be more than happy to walk you through how to break it. Which is also the reason why, Devon, my friend, if you're watching this, I am Kevin Mears, demonologist and paranormal investigator. This is my face. Feel free to take a shot. You won't like what happens. Because here's the secret as well. If you know what you're doing, when someone tries to curse you, Paul, I love you. If you know what you're doing when someone tries to curse you, not only can you break the curse, but the power of that curse rebounds on them, and they're going to wind up far worse off than you would have even if the curse had worked. You have nothing to worry about, Goober. And the reality is, well, Devon would be more likely to shoot himself in the foot than actually curse somebody. There are other people out in the world who have an idea of how to do this. You may run into somebody someday. I will point out, if anyone in my listening audience, and this doesn't just go for the people who are in the Watchdog community. Anyone who thinks they're under a curse or under some sort of demonic attack, feel free to reach out to me. My email's in the description. I don't charge for my services. I do this. I feel what I do is a gift from God, and my Bible says that I'm not allowed to charge people for the gifts that God has given me in a spiritual sense. So I don't do that kind of thing. But Patsy, you're right to a point. Patsy says it will backfire threefold. If you know how to break it just right, it's more like it will backfire 100-fold. Threefold is what you normally have to pay when you curse someone, even if it works, because the reality is your actions have consequences. There are ways around that. There's a wonderful way that's been used by Jews and Christians for hundreds of years, which is you don't ask for God to curse someone. You ask for God to deliver justice in a situation. You don't, and let him figure it out. The consequence to which is if you're in the wrong and you ask for justice, guess who's going to get the justice? But justice isn't vengeance. And it doesn't have asking for justice from a divine, benevolent being doesn't have the consequences of a curse, because they decide what's fair. They decide who's in the wrong. And if you're in the right, and you're morally in the right, and it's a benevolent being, they're not going to come down on you. They're going to come down on the other guy. But I've spent as much time as I want to on Devon. He's not that important. Let's talk some more about voodoo, because voodoo I find Devon I only find a little amusing. I think voodoo is absolutely fascinating, because it's a very different religion than most people in the West are used to. I was raised Roman Catholic. I've been to some other churches before. I've studied a number of other religions. But normally, when you go to church, you sit there and you pray to God. Some very special people, even in Catholicism, they call them mystics, hear God answer them. There's a woman named Julian in the Middle Ages who supposedly could hear from God. There's a man who was recently canonized named Padre Pio, who is believed to communicate directly with God. But most of us don't hear the voice of God. And certainly if you heard the voice of God, you don't generally expect him to show up for dinner. It's different in voodoo. The thing about this is it's different and it isn't. The mistake that a lot of people have, and it's even a mistake I'm making as I describe it, because it's such a different religious practice to what we're used to, is people tend to think of the Loa or the Iwa or the Orishas. They're different, or the voodoo for that matter, because they're different. Voodoo is actually a name for these deities originally. They tend to think of them as gods, but they're really not. There is a god in voodoo. Let me look up his name again because I forgot. Which is sad because I just looked it up earlier. But there is a true god in voodoo. And then there's lesser there are the Loa. And the thing is, voodoo is very much a deistic religion. There is a god who created the universe in voodoo. But he's not a god who does miracles, or at least not very often. He's a god who kind of got things running and sits back and watches. Instead, he created these spirits, these Loa. And the Loa are the ones that actually get involved in your day-to-day life. Bondye, I believe, and I apologize because I am probably butchering that pronunciation. He is the creator of the universe. He is God the Father, to put him in Christian terms. Grand Met Bonnier or Bonnie apparently, or Bondu in French. He is the supreme God. He's the one who created everything. He is the Father. I'm a little disappointed he didn't come to join us, but that's okay. But Bondier is one who got the whole universe. He got the dominoes going, as it were. And then you have Dambala, Ezruli, Papa Legba, Baron Samedi, and Baron LaCroix, and all of the other voodoo that work under him. Now, it's more like that the Loa are angels and archangels and saints. They aren't gods. They didn't have a hand in creating the universe, but they keep things running. They're the ones you go to if you need something. And this is where it really changes from most religions. If I'm going to do a voodoo ritual, I'm not just going to sit in my temple and pray to Papa Legba to do something for me. And Papa Legba is a common one because he's the intercessor. He's kind of he's the one who works between us mortals and the rest of the Loa. And and he's actually a pretty chill guy in most of the book. But you don't just pray to him and then hope he hears you and does something. You summon him to your ritual space, and he will ride one of the people in the ritual. He will possess that person. Now, it's not like demonic possession. Where in demonic possession, it's something horrible that happens that you don't want. This is something positive. This is something to hope for. This is something desirable. He will possess that person. He will make requests for sacrifice. You can make requests of him to do things for you. Traditional sacrifices are tobacco, rum. Particularly, there is the god of the dead in black magic, who is Baron Samedi. Any of you who've ever seen the movies Princess and the Frog, Dr. Fossier in that movie, his look is Baron Samedi. Samedi is a skeleton who dresses like an undertaker, complete with a top hat. He is the god of the dead. He's the low of the dead. He is the one you go to if you want to speak to a loved one who has passed. He is also the god of magic. But despite what you would think, being kind of a Grim Reaper figure and the fact he's a skeleton, he's also a party Loa. And when he comes, he wants rum. He wants tobacco. He wants to dance. He wants to have a good time. He's not an evil deity at all. He's dark, but like I said, he tends to be one of the fun ones. Broadly, there are three types of Loa. There are Rada Loa, which are the more peaceful ones, is really the Loa of love, for example. There are Petra Loa, like Ogun or Ogun Balagris, who are very violent and very, very angry and are seen as more demon Loa. Although I hesitate to put that label on them because they're still beings to be venerated. And then there are the Gedi, which are led by the Barons, Baron Simon, Baron LaCroix, which are the Loa of the dead. Which is the other thing about the Loa, is a very important person who's passed can become one of these Loa, which is where the sane idea comes in. For example, Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, both of her are long dead because there was actually two women who held the role. But both of them are honored as Loa by many people. You can go to her grave in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 in New Orleans, and you'll find people leave out offerings to her because they see her as one of these beings they're called to. Ron B says Moana Loa, on the Hawaiian Delight. There is actually a Hawaiian deity that's called a Loa. I don't know as much about Peloponnesian folklore as I do about voodoo. And I'm sorry, Ron, you missed. We clowned on the sovereigns already. No, I just don't think Devon Bey is interesting enough to do it, for me personally, to do an entire episode about him. So I'm going on to talk about voodoo instead of spending a whole stream on an idiot. If you come back later, go back and watch like about the first 20 minutes or so, and I spend some time dissecting why Devon's an idiot, particularly about voodoo. But so you have these. So like I was saying, a very important tribal leader, priest, priestess, warrior, males to become a lot of Loa associated with nature and with natural spirits and with animals. Two of arguably the most important are Dambala, the serpent is, and the rainbow as well, which is actually, let me look up her name because I'm going to make a mistake if I try and do it off. Aida, which is the law of water, wind, fire, and fertility, and the rainbow. Aida Wado, in fact. So if you know that movie by Wes Craven, or the novel it was based on by Wade Davis, The Serpent and the Rainbow, the serpent is Damballa, the rainbow is Aida Wado. They are the two of the most important, arguably the two most important loa in Haitian voodoo. These are kind of the ones that run the show for the Supreme Loa. Okay, welcome aboard, Connor. Feel free to correct me if you think what I've said about I have to say about voodoo and cursing is wrong. I'm a Christian. I like to think I know a decent amount about both, but since I don't practice magic, I'm not I'm by no means, nor am I a voodoo practitioner. I'm by no means an expert. The one thing hopefully I'm getting across is the voodoo, and this is really particularly even more than because I know Devon's not a threat. Even more than him threatening people with voodoo. And what really offends me is that people think of voodoo as black magic, and it isn't. It's not evil. It's not destructive. It's not wicked. And I would agree completely that The Occult is not a Hollywood film. Although, for that matter, a number of the extras in the movie The Serpent and the Rainbow were active voodoo practitioners, and there is some footage of actual voodoo ritual in that movie. And again, it is based on a book by Wade Davis. Davis is an ethnographer and a botanist. He went to Haiti. He studied voodoo. He studied the practices of voodoo in an attempt to understand the origin of zombies. He is very respectful, and for that matter, that's my point as well. I would certainly tell anyone out there because I see this question come up particularly at Core all the time. How do I do voodoo? How do I get into voodoo? I would never tell anybody not to practice. The first thing I would tell anybody who wants to get into voodoo is you need to understand you're not getting into a cool new way to hurt people with magic. You're getting into a new religion. And it's a very old religion as well. That's the other thing. Keep in mind, voodoo, as it's practiced today, is a combination of Roman Catholicism and African tribal religion. But that African tribal religion is ancient. It goes back, it's been practiced for thousands and thousands of years. They only adopted Catholicism as a method to survive. Disrespecting them and treating them as a joke or treating them as this evil, dark Halloween thing is a disrespect to this religion, and they don't deserve that. There are bad people who practice voodoo. There's no denying that. But there are bad people who practice Christianity. There are bad people who practice Wicca. There are bad people who practice any religion. Voodoo is absolutely not an inherently evil religion, nor should it ever be treated as such. It's not a way to curse your enemies. It's not a way to get rich and famous. It is something that takes dedication and seriousness, like getting involved in any other religion. And I know the people in my chat. Connor, you said you're a magician. I know Teresa Hall, City Penguin's been studying this. I know a lot of the people listening to me now, among the 7 viewers I currently have, know what I'm talking about better than I do. You're not my with respect, you're not my target audience with giving this talk. My target audience is the people that come and watch this who don't know anything about the religion. I want to try to give them an inkling of what it actually is and what it actually means, so that my hope as a Christian demonologist, as someone who tries to cast demons out of people in houses, is that people will step away from this video with a greater respect for somebody else's religious belief and practice. It's not mine, but I respect it as a valid path that is just not my own. And other people should treat it the same way. And they shouldn't be afraid of it. One of the things I happen to like about the movie Princess and the Frog is you have Dr. Fassier, who is a very Faustian figure. He is a very evil figure who practices voodoo. But you have other people in the movie that also practice voodoo who aren't. That's what I like about that movie. Is voodoo is a religion. Hoodoo, the magical practice around voodoo, has power to it. But power isn't inherently evil. It's what you do with power that determines the morality. And voodoo has a long history of being used in a number of ways. In Haiti, in the 1800s, when the slaves rose up and freed their island, they did a ritual on the night of the revolution in honor of the Loa and dedicating themselves and their people to their religion. So many of their soldiers were practitioners and believers. It gave them a sense of power in a situation where they were being treated incredibly unfairly. This is also true, particularly in its practice here in the United States. One of the reasons I respect Marie Laveau so much. So I've mentioned her a whole bunch of times. Let me talk a little bit about the Widow Paris, aka Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau is an incredibly important figure to the history of New Orleans voodoo. She was a African American woman. She wasn't a slave, but who lived in New Orleans. She's a hairdresser and a practicing Catholic, but she became known as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. She is the one very much responsible for bringing voodoo out of the swamps and away from being the secret thing that people talk about and into the light and showing everyone else what they do. There is St. John's Square in New Orleans. They did public voodoo rituals in the square. I agree absolutely, Teresa Hallgrove said and she says magic is natural. It's how you use it. Absolutely, I agree 100%. But Laveau brought it into the square. She charged admission. She let the white people come and see what they were doing and become more comfortable with it, more accepting of it. Now, she was a very smart woman as well, and she deserves respect for this as well, because remember, she was a hairdresser. And there's been truth to the old stereotype for a very long time. Women in hair salons, with all respect to my female viewers, but women in hair salons like to gossip. Particularly high-class, upper-class women in upper-class salons. This put Laveau in the perfect position to get useful information. Not only that, but she knew the other African-American women in the city, the ones who were the maids, the slaves, and the servants in the upper-class households. She could use that information, and did use that information to her advantage. She could use it to make herself seem more psychic. She could use it to subtly blackmail people to make sure that the thing she was trying to do succeeded. And I don't mean to say that she did these things in a way that shouldn't be respected. Because keep in mind, we're talking about the 19th century, a black woman in the deep South in the 19th century who rose to a position of power and influence. And that's truly something worthy of respect, in my opinion. Even though, yeah, the reality is she had to use some underhanded tactics. But she was smart enough to understand how to use them to her advantage. The other thing that she did that I think is quite awesome is I've said a couple of times there were two Marie Laveaus. The first one started it, and then another one took over from her. Her daughter. Why they did this is very simple but very clever. Because mom got a little old, daughter took over, keeping this illusion that she stayed eternally young. She was a showwoman and she was a showwoman at a time and a place where that's what her religion needed. And that's why we're having this conversation. This is why we have movies about voodoo and TV shows about voodoo and books about voodoo. All because she was very clever and understood how to get people to do what she wanted. And I am a very big respecter of that technique of hers because of what it got done. You can't argue with the results. I will say, on the other side of all of this, well, again, Devon Bey has no idea what he's doing. Somebody who actually understands the practices of voodoo is very dangerous if they want to use it for evil. A lot of people probably are understandably skeptical about that. And I'll be the first to tell you, I encourage you to be skeptical. Don't take anyone, including my word for something. People can be crazy. People can be wrong. People can do all sorts of things that equal something other than the truth. Not even intending to lie. But go sometime and Google voodoo death. Or sometimes it's called psychosomatic death. There is a medically recognized phenomenon where a person becomes convinced that they are under a curse and dies very quickly, often without any medical explanation. Healthy people. There is people will argue, and there's truth too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the people who make this argument are wrong. They have a legitimate point, and most practitioners of magic I've known over the years would agree with that. That there's a big element of this is belief. If you believe something strongly enough, it might as well be true. You see this in hypochondria and psychosomatic disorders in general. People can become so convinced that they have a disease that they actually will manifest symptoms that a doctor can recognize, even though they're not ill. It's bizarre, but it's real. Belief has power. On the other hand, the power of belief cuts both ways. The power to, and again, I suspect Connor might agree with me, and a lot of other magicians would agree with me. If you're going to curse somebody, if you want to cast a spell on somebody, you need to believe in your own ability. You need to believe that power, whatever you're trying to do, can be done. And if you can get somebody to question, if you can get a magician to question their power and their ability, you can use that. You can use that doubt as a weapon and a way to protect yourself, which is one of the basic ways of breaking a curse someone puts on you. It's convince them that it doesn't work. Because if you can convince them that it doesn't work, you turn them inward and start questioning their power and their ability. Even better, and this is particularly true of magical traditions like hoodoo that often rely on calling on spirits. If someone calls up a spirit to put a curse on you, and not all forms of curses do this, if someone calls up a spirit to put a curse on you, and they start start questioning that spirit, and doubting that spirit, and saying it's not working, it's gonna get ticked off. And again, it's a way of turning that power against the person using it against you. And it works. There are other methods. There are other things that can be done. And this is another thing I think, because this is a show about cursing, not just about voodoo. This is something a lot of Christians don't understand. The Bible includes curses. The Bible includes a bunch of curses. In fact, I was just talking about this with my coworkers the other day. So we're talking about horror movies. But there's the whole Dybbuk box thing that's been so popular lately. And a Dybbuk is a Jewish type of demon. A Jewish type of unclean spirit, it's more complicated than that. But the Judaism, particularly Orthodox Judaism and Hasidic Judaism, have a ritual of exorcism just like Christianity does. Actually, pretty much every religion has a ritual of exorcism. But when Jews do an exorcism, they don't call on St. Michael the Archangel. They don't call on Jesus. Obviously, they don't believe in him. They read from the Bible. Specifically, they read from the book of Psalms. So there's a series of Psalms that are known as the Imprecatory Psalms. The Imprecatory Psalms are calling for God to smite your enemies, to bring plague upon them, to destroy their farms, to kill them. And these were prayers that were written for people in Judaism and, by extent, Christianity to use. There's an excellent book. If you're not Christian, it isn't going to do you a whole lot of good because it's written with Christians in mind. But if anyone who's Christian who's interested in this subject, I would highly recommend. There's a book called Blessing and Cursing, You Decide, by Derek Prince, who goes into this in great detail. And he talks in the book about the power of words, the power of, Connor Maynard, the magician in our chat, points out regarding what I was saying, that's the transmutation of energy. You use the intention and direct it to the target. Intent in not just in magic, but in religion, in Christianity, in Judaism, and other religions, intent and desire have and will have an influence on what you're trying to do. And Prince's point, and I tend to agree with him, is that what we say carries power, and we should be mindful of what we say. Because sometimes you do things, you can direct something in prayer, you can direct something at a person that it winds up being a curse that you did not mean it to be. There are consequences. It's an important concept in magic, particularly in Wicca. There's the threefold rule: whatever you do comes back on you threefold. But there's an important concept in religion, philosophy, and to some extent magic. It goes by many names, the threefold law. For that matter, in Eastern religions, they talk about karma. Actions have consequences. And I think that's another thing worth considering is think about the words that you choose to say. Especially in prayer, in meditation, in the practice of magic, think about what you choose to say, because what you choose to say has a great deal to do with what you intend. It has a great deal to do with what happens. And you can do damage, including damage to yourself, without intending to, by being careless. Also, and to take that a step out of the mystical, the atheists and skeptics listening to me know I'm right too. And take out all the references to curses and replace them with the word gossip. Because one of the things the writer and this public speaker I most hate. Oh, I'll come back to that in a second, Patsy, because that's an excellent point and an interesting point. But one of the things I most hate as a writer and a public speaker is when people say it's just words. Words have power. Words have meaning. Language is what gives us, and I'm not talking mystically here, neurologically speaking, language is deeply linked to intelligence and reasoning. If you have a child who's born mute, who's born deaf, who can't speak, and you don't teach them some form of communication, even teach them sign language, studies have consistently shown they have developmental issues. Their intelligence won't progress the way that it should because of the fact that language is like the operating system of the brain. Human brains need language to function and to have the level of intelligence that we have. So, and aside from that, if anyone's ding bad enough to think that it's just words is true, that words don't have power, without getting in any way political, Think about how the entire history of the United States changed with these 3 words. I have, or 4 words. I have a dream. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. When God created the universe in the Bible, in the beginning there was darkness. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Words have power. Even without magic, words have power. Words have influence. What you say does, in fact, matter. This is the entire reason that in law and in philosophy we have concepts like slander and libel and hate speech. Connor Maynard said abracadabra means I create when I speak. I've heard that. I've heard it linked to a whole bunch of different things. My understanding is we're not entirely sure of the linguistic roots, although it's usually associated with a Babylonian entity, sometimes seen as a god, sometimes seen as a demon, known as Abraxas. Patsy Trigg makes the comment that it reminds her of the jinn, particularly the jinn in the lamp, on the 3 wishes that never work out quite how you expect. There's some truth in that. There's a lot of old video on this channel that's an enormous amount of fun that I can recommend people take a look at. Connor, you might be interested in particular. Or I have my friend Arthur Moyer on, and Arthur is a practicing magician. But he tells a story of a student of his who is a Christian magician who needed money. And he cast a spell that summoned a demon and asked it to give him money. It burned his house down. On the other hand, he collected insurance and gave him exactly the money he needed. So he's incredibly proud that his brilliant plan of summon a demon worked. There is some truth in the whole idea of you need to word things carefully, particularly with the nature of the jinn. The jinn don't by and large, aren't big fans of the human species. In Islam, the whole reason that the jinn rebel, or some of the jinn rebel, because not all of them do, is because Allah, God, creates the angels, and he creates the people, humans, and he creates the jinn. And he tells the angels and the jinn that they must bow down to man as his greatest creation. The angels, who by and large in Islam don't have free will, that depends to some extent on who you ask, bow down to man. Most of the jinn bow down to man. A jinn known as Iblis, who later becomes known as Shaitan, says, no, I will not bow down to man. Not in complete rebellion against Allah, but because Allah is the one and only God, and the only person that Iblis will bow to is God. He will not bow to Adam, because Adam is merely a created being like himself. The whole jinn and lamp thing comes in much, much later. Particularly, it comes from the story of King Solomon. In Judaism and in Islam, King Solomon summoned spirits to help him build his temple and to give him wisdom. Judaism tends to see them kind of as demons. Christianity, when it thinks of it at all, thinks of them as demons. Islam sees them as jinn. Some of them obey, some of them don't. The unruly ones, he shoves them in the bottle, puts the seal of Solomon on the bottle, and leaves them there. Either leaves them there until they feel like behaving themselves better. A few of them he chucked in the ocean to teach them a lesson, leading to my favorite story, the fisherman and the jinn. But that's particularly why some of the jinn are sealed. And you're right, Connor says of the story I told that that can happen. The manifestation can come with collateral damned. I like that, collateral damned. I'm going to have to remember that one. What amuses me, though, isn't the collateral damned, as it were. It's he's proud of the fact that that's how it worked. He got the result he wanted. He's content with that. This is also particularly why my friend Arthur, if you guys weren't there for it, I do recommend checking out the virtual convention I did in May called Wrath of Khan. It's not on this channel. It's its own channel, Wrath of Khan. And I had a bunch of awesome people, including Virgo Triad was the very first guest that we had. And then I had this magician I'm talking about, Arthur, on. And he talks about how he does things. And I'm losing train of thoughts. But at any rate, it's a lot of fun. And it is the nature of magic. It's like, be careful what you wish for. And when the advice he gives people doing magic is when you do a spell, mentally leave open the possibility of going back and changing the details later, especially if it's something that's going to keep running. Because in his opinion, you can do that because spells are just a creation of your will. So you can just allow yourself to change it, and then change it if you need to, so that you don't have things like this happen. Patsy Trigg says, I'm never going to open an old bottle washed up on the seashore, lol. I should explain that, I feel. The story of the fisherman and the gin is that the fisherman is out fishing. And he has this rule. Whenever he fishes, he only throws his net 3 times. Whatever he catches in those 3 times is his catch of the day, and he goes home. So one day he goes out and he throws it, and it comes back it's heavy. He's having a hard time pulling it back. He thinks he's got a huge haul. He does, of mud and dirt and grime. Spends some time cleaning out his net, cursing, and throws it back. And starts pulling. And it's even heavier. Because, rocks are heavier than mud and dirt and grime. So he cleans out his net. And he's frustrated. Because he has his rule. So he's going to cast one more time that day. So he prays to Allah that he gets something in his third casting. He casts again. And he pulls it back. There's a bottle. Shakes it. It seems to be empty, but he knows there's a bit of darkness right at the top, just underneath the seal. Maybe it's some liquid. Maybe it's some valuable wine or something that he can sell. Maybe it's or oil or something he can use. So he pops the seal. Huge smoke billows out, and a huge, powerful jinn appears before him. The jinn looks down on him and says, Mortal, as a reward for freeing me, I will grant you your choice of ways to die. And the fisherman comes up and goes, wait a second, I thought I was supposed to get riches, wishes, great wealth, and princesses to fulfill my every dream, and ways to die? Then he goes, yes, for you see, King Solomon sealed me in that bottle. And for the first 1,000 years, I thought, whoever shall free me, I will grant them 1,000,000 gold pieces. All the treasures of the world shall be theirs. For the second 1,000 years, I thought, whoever frees me, I will spend the rest of their life as their most humble and willing slave. Anything they wish they shall have. And as time wore on, and no one freed me from my imprisonment, I decided the only boon I would grant the person who finally freed me was the choice of ways to die. And our hero, the fisherman, is a quick thinking sort and says, well, if I'm going to die anyway, can I at least make one small request? And he goes, very well, but make it short. I have been gone from this world a long time. So you, where'd you come from? Wait, what? I came from the lamp. You were here. You saw that? Yeah, I saw you appear, but you can't have come from the lamp. Look how big you are and how small this lamp is. That's not possible. Yes, it is. You dare doubt me? I mean, come on. Could you maybe just go back in the lamp for a minute and just prove it? Very well. Just for a moment, I will return to my lamp to prove to you I am not a liar. Gin goes back in the bottle. Being a quick-witted sort, the fisherman takes the lid, pops it back on the bottle, and goes to throw it back in the ocean. There's more to the story. Basically, as is the theme of the Arabian Nights, which is where it appears, the jinn begs for his freedom, and the fisherman says, "But I couldn't do that because if I free you, I'd be as foolish as so-and-so," and proceeds to tell the story. And the jinn goes, "But if you freed me, I'd reward you," and tells another story about how great the rewards were. They go back and forth, and eventually he frees the jinn. The jinn actually does make him very rich and does all the things that he wants. There's also the other versions of the story I heard that I always like, which is that he just went for distance and threw that friggin' lamp as far as he could throw it. It's a great story. I highly recommend checking out Arabian Nights. But thankfully, we're now just about on the hour. I was happily able to get us back on track, if just a little late. Before I wrap everything up for the night, I wanted to open the floor and see if anybody had any questions and comments. I do want to take a second to give a shout out to my friend Dacre Stoker. So last week, I talked about on the show how I was ordering a certain something from Dacre and from the Dracula store. And here it is. We have that is the Bram Stoker bobblehead. I think this is just plain awesome. It was about $35, and that included shipping. It was here within like 4 or 5 days. It's good quality. It's a lot more solid than I'm used to from bobblehead. And it just amuses me to no end. I've had 2 bobbleheads in my life. One would be Bram here. The other one was Yoda. And this is a much better quality bobblehead than Yoda was, or most of the other ones I'm familiar with. I think it was worth it. It also came with a very nice signed certificate of authenticity from Dacre. His shop has a bunch of other cool Dracula-related merchandise. You can go on Etsy, look up the Bram Stoker estate or the Dracula store. They got phone covers, a welcome mat that we're thinking about getting for our apartment, some things like that. But again, does anybody have any questions, any comments? I want to thank you all for joining me. I mean, at the highest point tonight, we had 8 live viewers, which is, I think, a new personal best for this channel. And I'm incredibly pleased and honored to have reached that point. You've all been a lot of fun in the chat. This is why I used to, for those of you who've been with me a long time, I've been doing this for going on 6 years now. I mean, I used to started out pre-recording them and I'm not uploading them. And then I switched to doing them live like this. I vastly prefer live. It is so much more fun to interact with people in the chat. We're going to be wrapping it up, I think, since there don't seem to be any questions or comments to share on air that I haven't already. Folks, if you enjoy what I've done, if you like what I'm doing, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell so you get the notifications. I do broadcast once a week, always on Saturdays, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's an Eastern Standard Time. Obviously, tonight was a little longer and a little bit different because of the false start we had with my connection issues. Praise God for the fact that we got through an hour of all this. Thank you for coming to say hello, Sassearch. And I'm glad that you had fun, Patsy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I love all of my listeners. I'm not quite done yet, so by all means. Like I said, I do it every week. Next week should, unless any other surprises come up between now and then, be about the novel Frankenstein. I'm going to get into this story of Mary Shelley, how she got her ideas. And thank you, Connor. That means a great deal. But like I said, in the meantime, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. Okay, that's a fair question, Sinach. How long have I known about Devon? Which was, of course, the original topic of this video, and the man who brought us all together tonight. I want to say I first saw videos a year or so ago on. I don't watch Devon's channel at all. I don't want to give that man any more views or subscribers and likes or anything else than possible, which is why you won't find a link to his channel, any of his apparently many channels in the description. But I watch him through Virgo. I watch Virgo Triad quite regularly. She and I have been friends for some time now. I watch Red Pirate Films. I watch Generation Nation. I watch Vilified Freedom. I've watched Wonder Woman. I've watched Chuck Chase's Effects. I try to watch a lot of the Watchdog community. They're a great bunch of people. I'll put a link in the description to Virgo Triad's website. I highly recommend you go check that out. She's got links to the various other watchdogs. They all have really cool channels. They do some good stuff. She puts a lot of good information on her site and her own YouTube channel. And she's also been very, very kind to me in helping to promote this video tonight. So the least I can do is return the favor. But yeah, that's going to do it for tonight. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe. If you happen to have a few extra bucks, you might consider going to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/demonology. You don't have to remember that. By the way, I put links and emails and all that in the description of every video. So all you have to do is go check the description. You can pay. My PayPal is in there, my email, and my personal email, which is kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia. You can email me at the Rocket Mail, which is my PayPal account, but Rocket Mail is not real dependable, so I would recommend using what's listed in the description as my email, which is the Paranormal Encyclopedia at kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com. I am always open to suggestions for topics. I am open to anyone who thinks they might make a good guest or knows someone who would. I'm also, for that matter, open to people who think I'm wrong and want to tell me about it. Feel free to do so. Realize that if you get excessively vulgar or threatening, I will simply delete your comment. Yeah, I follow most of the auditors, Sassenach. Like I said, I've actually had Virgo on the on streams of mine, I'd say 3 or 4 times now. I also watch a lot of the other ones. I'm subscribed to Vilified and Jajan and Chuck and Wonder Woman, and I think they're all wonderful people and recommend everybody go check them out. Basically, I highly suggest going to virgotriad.com. Again, there'll be a link in the description. And just go to the Watchdog part and go subscribe to everybody. They're all very cool people. And I think a lot of them are better YouTubers than I am, to be completely honest. Not that I think I'm a terrible YouTuber. I just think there are better. Obviously, I usually don't talk about. I usually try to avoid talking about other YouTube channels, particularly in a derogatory manner, or other individuals, because I always try to take this from a position of respect. I don't want to. Other people have different views and different opinions than I do. I don't want to disrespect that. But when somebody makes threats, particularly paranormal threats, which are directly in my wheelhouse, to people I respect and care about, I feel the need to respond, which is why we have this video here tonight. Very nice, Sass. Like I said, I have nothing negative to say about anyone in the Watchdog community. There are more that I've been on as well. I'm just thinking of the ones that jump in my head off the top of my head. What's his name? Common Sense Academy is another really good one. I've watched a bunch of times. There are so many of them doing so much good work. I'd be here for another 10 minutes listing them all, the virtues of all of them. Which is why, again, I'll link and to recommend Virgo's website. And her channel is also very much worth watch. She's a very wonderful, classy lady who has some very cool things to say about subjects and knows. And all of them know far more about the sovereign citizen and Moorish American cult movement than I do. And everything I do, anything I got right in this video when I talked about Devon and his beliefs, you can credit to those people. Anything I got wrong is my own fault. Because I didn't even know they existed until I started watching the various debunkers and watchdogs. But this ending is getting far longer than intended, so I am going to wrap it up for the night. I want to thank Patsy Triggs, Sassenach, Connor Maynard, Virgo Triad, Teresa Hall, Gulf City Pagan, Charles Lamb was there in here at one point, and I don't want to forget Rebecca, Dirty South Cats, and anyone who didn't speak out or I happen to forget. I want to thank you all for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all as part of the chat when I'm doing these videos. That's going to do it for tonight. God bless you all. If you don't share my faith, I hope whatever deity you believe in blesses you. And if you're not an atheist, if you're an atheist and you don't believe in gods at all, I wish you a wonderful, happy day and a happy week and good health. That's it for tonight. I'll see you all next week. Goodbye.